You're listening to AF Tales. This story is about an ex who tried to humiliate the man she once dated by making him fund her engagement party, and he quietly turned her perfect night into a public receipt. As you listen, ask yourself where you would have walked away. I need to start with what I do for a living, because it matters. My ex said, "Pay for it and leave." I replied, "Consider it handled." Then I finished the setup, tweaked her video wall, locked the AV system, and watched the party expose who paid for everything while her fiancé realized the truth. My name is Noah. I design high-end events in Los Angeles, not weddings. Think rooftop product launches in West Hollywood, brand activations in downtown lofts, nights where everything has to look effortless but cost someone 6 figures. I handle logistics, lighting, timing, the flow of the evening. I make sure people remember the night for the right reasons. The irony is that I spent 5 years with someone who didn't think any of that mattered. Her name is Tessa. We got together back when I was building my business out of a shared office space in Culver City. Over 5 years, I grew into my own studio and a team of 8. Tessa was in PR, climbing fast, always talking about branding and optics and controlling the narrative. I loved how driven she was. I thought we were building something together. Then one night she ended it without drama. She sat on my couch, drinking the coffee I made, looking at me like I was a piece of furniture she had outgrown. She told me I was too safe, too predictable, too focused on work that didn't have enough flash. She said she needed someone who matched her energy, someone who understood ambition in a way people could see. That's not a breakup. That's a performance review. 2 weeks later, she was dating Blake Stanton. If you're in LA tech or startup circles, you know the type. Loud everywhere, calling himself a visionary on LinkedIn, talking about disrupting industries he doesn't understand. Crypto, some kind of investment fund, and expensive dinners that seemed to be the whole business model. Tessa loved that about him. I didn't beg. I didn't bargain. I let her go and buried myself in my work. That was a year ago. 3 months ago, she called me. That should have been my first warning sign because Tessa never does anything that isn't calculated. Her voice was warm, almost apologetic, like we were old friends catching up. She told me she was getting married. Blake had proposed at her resort in Tulum, and it was perfect. Then she said she wanted me to design the engagement party. At first, I thought maybe it was a closure gesture. Maybe she wanted to end things on better terms. She said she trusted my taste more than anyone. She said she knew I would make it beautiful. She said it would mean a lot to her if I said yes. I'm not going to pretend I didn't feel something when she said that. Not hope exactly, but something softer. Like maybe we could put a clean ending on a messy story, so I agreed. The first meeting was fine. Professional. We met at the venue she'd chosen, a glass-walled rooftop in Century City with views that stretch from downtown to the ocean on clear days. Blake wasn't there. Tessa showed me a mood board full of blush tones and gold accents. Very her. I took notes, asked questions, and she smiled at me the way she used to. For a moment, it almost felt normal. The second meeting was different. Blake was there, and he barely looked up from his phone. When I suggested a specific vendor for the floral installations, Tessa cut me off. Blake prefers something more expensive, she said, something that will photograph better. When I walked her through the timeline for the evening, she looked at Blake and said, "See, this is what I meant. He thinks small." That was a clear sign. I saw it. I just didn't listen to it. Sometimes pride disguises itself as professionalism. You tell yourself you're committed when really you're just refusing to admit you should leave. The third meeting was the walkthrough. Tessa brought friends I didn't know and Blake brought a few business partners. Everyone stood around with champagne flutes, talking about how incredible the night was going to be. My team and I were running through last-minute details when Tessa pulled me aside. I remember every word. "Noah, I can tell this is hard for you. Seeing me happy, I mean, so if you are uncomfortable, you can just cover the champagne tonight and leave before the party starts. I think that would be easier for everyone." She said it loud enough that people turned to look. Blake smirked. One of her friends actually laughed. In the space I had designed, with the champagne I had arranged, I felt something I hadn't felt since the day she left. Clarity. I smiled. "Sure, Tessa," I said. "I will take care of everything." She looked relieved, like I had just made her life easier. Blake nodded and went back to his phone. Their friends went back to their conversations, like I was part of the staff. I called my assistant and told her to proceed with final setup exactly as planned. Then I left the venue, got in my car, and sat there for 10 minutes staring at the steering wheel. That's the strange part about humiliation. It doesn't always feel like anger. Sometimes it feels like your brain finally stops defending someone who never deserved the defense. When I got back to my office, I did what I always do before a major event. I reviewed every detail, every vendor, every contract, every invoice, and I realized something important. Tessa had been so focused on the look of everything that she let me handle all the payments. Every vendor was someone I'd worked with before. Every deposit had gone through my company account because she kept saying it was easier that way and she would reimburse me after. She never did. Not once. Every time I brought it up, she said Blake was handling it, or she would get me the money next week. And I didn't push. I kept paying. I kept building the night she wanted because part of me still wanted to finish the job clean. The party was on a Saturday night. I showed up 6 hours early with my team. We built the lighting, the florals, the bar stations, the lounge areas, everything. The venue looked incredible. If I'm being honest, it was the kind of setup that makes you believe in perfect moments, even though you know they're constructed. The thing Tessa was most excited about was the video wall. She had planned a big intro. A montage of her and Blake's relationship, engagement photos, candid travel shots, messages from friends and family. She hired a videographer, handed over all the footage, and asked me to make sure it played right when guests arrived. I made sure it played. But when you work with AV teams long enough, you learn how systems work. You learn what you can access when you're the one coordinating the setup. And the night before the party, I made a few adjustments. The video started exactly the way she planned. Tessa and Blake on the beach in Chalum. Tessa and Blake at some gala, smiling like a brand deal. Perfect. The image she wanted everyone to believe. Then, about 2 minutes in, it changed. The screen cut to screenshots of old Instagram posts Tessa had made when she was building her personal brand, posts about independence and never needing a man to feel complete. Then it cut to photos from when Tessa and I were together. Photos she had used on an old portfolio site to show off her lifestyle. Photos where I was clearly in the background, but she had cropped me out in the versions she posted. Pictures from events she later implied she attended alone. And then, at the end, the screen went black and one message appeared. This event was proudly designed and fully funded by Noah Carter Events. My company logo. My contact information. And then, underneath, a clean timeline showing every invoice, every payment, every vendor contract, all under my name. The video looped. Tessa was in the middle of live streaming guest arrivals when it hit. I watched from the back of the venue as people started noticing. Conversations got quieter. Phones came out. Heads turned toward the screen and then toward Tessa. That's what happens when someone builds their life on optics. The second the optics change, they lose their footing. She screamed at the AV tech to shut it down. He told her he didn't have access to the system. He was hired through the venue, not my company, and that was true. I had locked the system remotely before I even got there. Blake didn't storm out right away. That surprised me. He stood there watching the screen for a full minute. Then he looked at Tessa with an expression I had never seen on him before, not anger. Disgust. Like he had just realized he invested in something worthless. Then he walked out. Half the guests followed him. I left before anyone could find me. I got in my car, drove to a diner in Silver Lake, and sat there for 2 hours drinking coffee and staring at nothing. My phone was exploding. Messages from people at the party, people who saw the live stream, people I hadn't spoken to in years. I turned it off. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Maya. You don't know Maya yet, but she matters. She used to work with Tessa back when Tessa was early in PR. They had a falling out over something Tessa did to a client, something Maya refused to cover for. Maya is an event planner now. We've collaborated on projects. We're friendly. Her text said, "I saw what happened last night. Call me when you can." I called. She didn't start with praise or questions. She just asked if I was okay. Then she told me the video had gone viral. Someone recorded the whole thing and posted it online. It was everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. People were calling it the engagement party that exposed itself. Brands Tessa worked with were distancing themselves. Blake posted something vague about being misled and started scrubbing photos of them together. Maya paused, then said, "I'm not going to tell you this was the right thing to do, but I'm also not going to tell you it was wrong." I didn't know what to say to that. Then she added, "There's something else you should know about Tessa, about how she's been running her business, but not over the phone." We agreed to meet later that week. When I hung up, I watched notifications pile up like a storm I couldn't stop. My business email was full. Some messages congratulated me. Some told me I went too far. One email was from Tessa's lawyer. Subject line, "Cease and desist." I didn't open it yet. 2 days later, I did. The letter was 10 pages of aggressive language, emotional distress, defamation, breach of contract, sabotaging her event, humiliating her in front of influential people. I handed it to my lawyer. He read it, looked up at me, and asked one question. "Did she sign the vendor contract you sent her?" She did. In that contract, there's a clause that gives my company full rights to use any event we design for promotional purposes, including documentation and media. Standard language. Every client signs it. Most people never read it carefully. Tessa definitely didn't. My lawyer sent a response that was polite and clear. Everything I did was within the contract. The content used was either provided by Tessa or publicly available. The financial disclosure was factual. Her lawyer never responded. Then I met Maya. We sat at one of those coffee shops in Los Feliz where everyone's on laptops pretending they're writing a screenplay. Maya ordered a cappuccino and didn't touch it. She just stared at it like she was deciding how much truth to drop on the table. Finally, she said, "I need to tell you why Tessa and I stopped being friends. 4 years ago, Tessa worked at a PR firm handling corporate clients. One client was a skincare company in trouble for false advertising. The CEO was making medical claims that weren't FDA approved. It was a mess. According to Maya, Tessa told the CEO to keep making the claims but phrased them differently. She told him to pay influencers to post testimonials that looked personal but were actually ads with no proper disclosure. She suggested creating fake consumer advocacy groups to defend the brand online. Not spin. Fraud. Maya found out because she was involved in influencer outreach. She refused to participate and told Tessa it was illegal. Tessa called her naive, told her this is how the industry works, told her if she wanted to succeed, she needed to stop being precious about rules. Maya quit the next day. She reported what she knew. Tessa got a slap on the wrist and blamed Maya for trying to sabotage her. The CEO eventually got fined by the FTC. Tessa moved on to another firm before it touched her directly. I asked Maya why she was telling me now. She said, "Because one of the vendors you hired for the party called me yesterday. He said Tessa paid him with a corporate check from her current PR firm. The memo line said it was for a client event, not a personal party. He wanted to know if that was normal. It wasn't. Using company money for personal expenses is fraud, and depending on the details, it can be much worse." Maya's firm has a white-collar division. She introduced me to a partner. He asked if I had copies of the invoices and payment records for the party. I did. Everything was documented. He reviewed it, asked a few questions, and said he would reach out to the appropriate authorities. I didn't think much would come of it. Then 2 days later, Maya called. Tessa's PR firm had put her on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Someone tipped off the IRS about irregularities in expense reports, and Tessa's name was all over them. Blake vanished from her life too. He released a statement through a publicist saying he was unaware of any financial mismanagement and ended the relationship as soon as he learned about potential improprieties. Carefully worded, pure self-protection. Tessa's Instagram went private. Her LinkedIn still said PR strategist, but her employment history started getting scrubbed. The firm released a statement saying they were cooperating with authorities and taking allegations seriously. I didn't set out to ruin her career. I really didn't. All I wanted was for people to know I paid for the party she tried to humiliate me at. But once the first thread got pulled, everything unraveled. The weird part is how I felt. I expected satisfaction, vindication, something clean and sharp. Instead, I felt tired. I kept thinking about who she was when we first met. Before ambition turned into something else. Before she decided appearances mattered more than anything real. Meyer and I started talking more, not about Tessa, about other things. She helped me navigate the media attention, which was surreal. A few business outlets wrote about the party as a cautionary tale about influencer culture and financial transparency. My company got more inquiries in 3 weeks than we had all last year. I hired 2 more people just to keep up. Meyer and I got dinner one night. Nothing fancy. A food truck near Chinatown, sitting on a bench, talking about how strange it is when something personal becomes public. She told me that after what happened with Tessa, she almost left the industry. Watching someone she trusted become unrecognizable made her question whether she wanted to work in a world where that kind of behavior was rewarded. I told her I understood that feeling more than I wanted to. She looked at me and said, "The difference is you didn't become like her. You stayed yourself. That's rarer than you think." I didn't know if it was true, but I appreciated hearing it. Then an email came in from Tessa's assistant. Subject line, "She wants to talk." No context. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wondered what she could say. Part of me thought I already knew, and part of me was just done. Meyer offered to come with me if I met her, not to confront her, just to be there. Eventually, I agreed. We met at the same rooftop venue where the party happened. I told Tessa I would give her 30 minutes. I arrived early. The space was empty now, stripped down to tables and chairs. No lighting, no flowers, no movement, just quiet. Tessa walked in exactly on time. She wore jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back, no makeup. I had never seen her look so plain, not ugly, just unguarded, like she ran out of energy for performance. She stopped a few feet away and tried to smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for coming," she said. I didn't answer. I just waited. "Feels different, doesn't it?" she said, "without all the everything." "Yeah," I said, "it does." She took a breath. "I wanted to apologize for what I said at the walkthrough, for how I treated you during planning, for everything." I nodded, still didn't rush to speak. "I know what you did at the party," she continued, "and I know you think I deserved it. Maybe I did, but it destroyed everything. My career, my relationship, my reputation, everything I built. You destroyed it," I said quietly. "I just turned on the lights." She flinched. "That's not fair," she said. I looked at her directly. "You used company money to pay for a personal event. You manipulated vendors. You built a career on cutting corners and hoping nobody noticed. I didn't do that. You did. I made mistakes," she said, and there was something desperate in her voice. "But you didn't have to make them public. You didn't have to humiliate me in front of everyone. You humiliated yourself," I said. "You stood in front of me and told me to pay for your party and leave. You did that in front of your friends, your fiancé, and all the people you wanted to impress. You made that choice. I just showed people who actually funded the night." She went quiet, then her voice hardened. "You know what I think," she said. "I think you needed this. You needed the last word so you could be the hero in your own story. You couldn't handle that I moved on, that I found someone better. So you sabotaged the one night that was supposed to be perfect." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly Tessa. Even now, she couldn't see it. "I didn't sabotage anything," I said. "I just stopped protecting you from yourself." She stared at me like she wanted to break through my calm. Then she shook her head, pulled her bag higher on her shoulder and said, "I thought maybe you had changed, grown up, but you're still the same boring, small person you always were." She turned and walked toward the elevator. I watched her go. The doors opened. She stepped inside. Then she was gone. I stayed there a few minutes alone in the empty space, thinking about how loud that rooftop had been on party night and how honest it felt now that everything was stripped away. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "How did it go?" I typed back. She wanted me to feel guilty. "I don't," she replied right away. "Good, want to grab dinner?" I did. We met at a food truck downtown, tacos, styrofoam cups of horchata. We sat on a bench in Grand Park, watching people pass, talking about everything except Tessa. Maya told me about a gallery opening she was working on in Echo Park. I told her about an inquiry from a nonprofit that wanted an event for underprivileged kids. Normal stuff. Real stuff. At one point she said, "You know what I've learned? The quietest revenge is just living well, not broadcasting it, not proving anything, just doing the work, being decent, and showing up for people who matter." I thought about how much noise Tessa had always needed, how much validation, how much proof that she was winning. And I thought about sitting there in fading daylight, drinking bad horchata, feeling more at peace than I had in years. She told me I gave her the perfect night, I said, just not the one she wanted. Maya smiled. Sounds about right. We stayed until the sun went down. Then we walked back to our cars. We made plans to meet next week to scout locations for her gallery event, and we went our separate ways. Driving home through LA traffic, I realized revenge isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's refusing to carry someone else's weight anymore. Sometimes it's showing up, doing your work with integrity, and letting the truth speak without embellishment. Tessa wanted a viral moment. She got one. Just not for the reasons she hoped. Lesson 1: if someone cares more about optics than integrity, they will eventually collapse under their own performance. Lesson 2: humiliation is often a tool people use when they think you won't defend yourself. Calm boundaries are a stronger defense than shouting. Lesson 3: read your contracts, keep your records, and document everything. Professionalism protects you when emotions get weaponized. Lesson 4: when the truth comes out, you don't always feel victory. Sometimes you just feel relief that you're done carrying what was never yours. Lesson 5: the quietest revenge is a clean life. Real relationships, real work, and peace you don't have to post about. What would you have done the moment your ex told you to pay for the party and leave? And do you think Noah went too far with the video wall, or was it the exact consequence Tessa earned?